In His presence there is comfort. In His presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord. Cover me, Lord, with your presence.
Good morning and welcome to Unveiled, a presentation of the Church Street Church of Christ in Lewisburg, Tennessee. Unveiled is simply a one-on-one conversation between Christian people designed to help each of us, as followers of Christ, become more aware of and better respond to the presence of God at work in our daily lives. Okay, my guest today is Will Brown, and Will, first of all, thank you for taking the time to be with me today.
Glad to be here.
Will, why don't you take a few minutes and just introduce yourself to me and to our listening audience? Whatever you want to let us know about Will Brown, go.
Okay. Like you said, my name is Will Brown. I'm the youth minister here at Church Street, 3 years this past October, actually. I've worked in youth ministry for about a total of 6 years at Westview. Before here, I was at Church Street. I'm married to Stacy Cole, obviously now Brown, but people still call her Cole because she grew up here at Church Street. I've been married to her 4 years this January. I grew up here in Lewisburg all my life. I went to school here. I went to college at MTSU, but I've always been a hometown guy. So even going to college, I was commuting back and forth. I've always been here. So I've been really active in youth in general, even before I was a minister, and just being at a church home, being in a hometown has always been really great to me. My parents are Carrie and Denise Brown. They both grew up here as well, and I've got two grandparents surviving, one on each side. My mom's mom, Linda Riley, and then my dad's mom, June Brown.
Okay, so obviously your family is rooted here in Lewisburg. So did your parents both go to school at Marshall County High School?
Yes, but different times. They're 9 years apart.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of a gap there. They got together when my dad was, if I remember correctly, 28 and she was 19-ish, around there.
So how did that happen? That's kind of a big number of years there.
It is. Apparently hanging out in the square was a really popular thing, and it was one of those things they just bumped into each other there, and that's sort of what kicked it off.
So both your mom and your dad grew up in Lewisburg,
Mm-hmm.
both went to Marshall County High School,
Mm-hmm.
and both you and your brother grew
Yep.
up here and went to school at Marshall County. Did you
Yep.
have were there any of the teachers that were still the same through the years?
A little bit, but my brother was always smarter than me in school, so he had a little bit more honors classes and AP stuff than I did. But some of them, yes. And a lot of, because we were so involved with sports and stuff, a lot of people know my family through me, my brother, my parents, and stuff like that. So we know the same people at school, even if we didn't have them as the same teachers.
So were there any teachers while you were a student at Marshall County that were teaching when either of your parents were there?
Miss Kavner, I think, was one. Mr. Sanders was one, Dave Sanders. It's weird calling him Mr. Sanders. I always call him Dave. But outside of that, off the top of my head, I can't remember at the moment, but I know them two at least because Mom and Dad both had those two, while me and Peyton also had those two later on. So
that's fascinating to me because I grew up in a situation that was very different from where my parents grew up, and so we never had that experience. I just think it's interesting when a child has the same teacher that his parent had.
Yeah, they always joke, like, are you going to act like your mother or your father? Class.
So when you look back over your life and you look back all the way back to your childhood, I'm interested in what your religious memory is, what your religious experience was growing up with your family.
We always went to church. My mom was a big proponent of that. Even on the mornings when I was younger and didn't want to go and wanted to sleep in, she always made sure we went, sometimes kicking and screaming to the extent. But I always make the comment, I was born and raised at Westview. I went there for 25 years of my life until I started here at Church Street. It was my church home and still has a piece of my heart kind of thing. But we always went. When I got to about 5th or 6th grade, we got really involved with youth and stayed involved with youth, obviously, because I'm a youth minister. So Church has always held a very special place for me. It's always been really important to me to attend, to be there at stuff, even the things that are called extra stuff that are not necessarily services. We were all just really involved. My mom pushed that a lot on us to go. My dad, for various reasons, whether it was work or different things, wasn't always able to come, but Mom always made sure we were at church. And then my youth minister, I had the same youth minister throughout all of my youth years at Westview, which was Mike Whitehead. And he was a big factor with me in my career choice, obviously. He had a big influence on me. And even in high school, some of the conversations and stuff we would have were very much more adult than just youth minister kid. Because I always liked helping with youth. I was teaching and doing devotionals and different things even before I graduated high school. I was always really into youth stuff at church.
So take it from all of that you were 3-time-a-weekers. Every time the doors were open at the church, your family was there.
Yes, we were. We tried our hardest. Now, like I said, me and Peyton did sports, so sometimes sports and school got a little busy, and we would have to do different things. Like with retreats at Westview, we'd come up at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday to make sure we were there for the weekend. But we always made sure we were there as much as we could.
Yeah, okay. So when you look back over that, obviously you have a very rich church background. You've really, kind of like me, we're very similar in that you've known nothing else all your life. So that makes it even more challenging sometimes to figure out as you look back on that, at what point did you feel like you discovered that God truly was real for you, that your faith was not just something passed along to you from your mother or your father, but when you could say, this is who I am? Was it a point in time? Was it a period of time? When did that happen for you?
I would probably say I had 2 different points like that. The first one being when I was baptized. I sort of blindsided my parents with it. I had been thinking about it. I was about 12 years old. I'd been thinking about it, and I think they knew that a little bit, but it was, I don't remember the sermon. I don't remember the invitation song or nothing, but I remember sitting there in the pew, and I just got emotional, and I got like, I need to be baptized. I need to do what I need to do. I know I need to be a Christian. I know Christ died for this reason, for my sins. I need to be baptized. So to the point I was even crying. But at that time, I was a little more of a nervous kid, so I didn't walk down the aisle. I waited for Mike, actually, because I think he preached that morning, if I remember correctly. He walked down the aisle at the end of the invitation song because he was going to be out there to like greet people as they came out after the closing prayer. But I caught him after the invitation song out in the back hallway and talked to him about it. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I need to be a Christian. I need to do what I need to do. I need to try to live the life I need to live. And then, as I went throughout middle school and high school, obviously I was still very consistent. There was no big epiphany kind of moments for me. But another one came when I was in college. My first semester at college, I went to Bethel University. And I had some rough experiences there. A lot of experiences that tested my faith on a lot of different levels. And after that semester, it was... Obviously, I was a little down in the dumps because of how rough it was with my roommates and some of the people I was around on the football team because I played for Bethel before injuring myself. And there was a lot of testing there, a lot of struggles. And some advice from Mike and from my parents, stuff like that, helped me get through it. But that sort of stamped it, I guess, for me. Like, this has made me a lot more solid in my faith, a lot more confident in my trust in God. Because if I can get through this semester, because I will say, without going into too much detail, there was practically traps laid for me, literal traps in some instances that they tried to get me to do things and say things and see things that I shouldn't be involved with. But that was where I was like, okay, there's always this tagline that makes me think of it too. If you're heading towards danger, sometimes that means you're going the right way because things try to stop you. Mm-hmm. So if I'm having all these tests and all these hardships here at Bethel, that must mean I'm doing the right thing because Satan is trying to pull me away from my faith. And that really solidified, like, church is where I need to be. A Christian is what I need to be. And it really solidified that for me.
So when you went off to college, did you feel like you had lived all of your life prior to that kind of in a bit of a bubble?
Yeah, it made me realize that. I always knew, like, in high school and stuff, like, obviously people had different beliefs than I did, different values. Even people that were Christians had different values than me. I always sort of knew that, but going to college, and especially once I went past Bethel to Columbia State and MTSU, I did wake up and really see that bubble get popped a little bit because I took some classes even at MTSU that were religious-based classes, religion and law, religion and society, that were discussion kind of classes. So I see all the different values and the different opinions people have on faith, and yeah, my bubbles popped a little bit. I found out real quick some of the differences in opinions people have, and how, just like how confident I am, how confident they are as well in theirs.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because I've had some similar experiences myself, and it makes me wonder that sometimes I think God uses those negative experiences to show us what we don't want to be. Maybe you met some people that completely turned you off, and you thought, whatever I do with my life, I don't want to be like that. And I think those kinds of situations, circumstances, and people come up to maybe steer us. And so that's what I'm interested in us exploring together, is how God uses people, circumstances, experiences you've had to nudge you in one direction or another. So you've mentioned graduating from Marshall County, and you mentioned Bethel, Columbia State, and MTSU. So walk us through that path, and what made you change colleges? Did you change course of study? What role do you think God played in steering your life through that phase?
When I was in high school, I always wanted to coach football. That was my thing. So I was like, okay, to coach football, you've got to be a teacher of some sort. And I was good at math. So I was like, I'll just be a math teacher and I'll coach football. That's sort of what I wanted to do. So going to Bethel, which I got a scholarship to go play football for Bethel, but I was going to be a math teacher. So I went into mathematics as my major. Went through that semester, and like I said, it was a rough semester. So I was one and done there. I injured myself, so I wasn't going to play football anymore. And I had a rough time in the dorm and stuff like that. So that's when I transferred to Columbia State. And I was still pursuing the same thing, wanting to be a math teacher. But about halfway through my time at Columbia State, working towards my associates, I just didn't really want to do math anymore. I was like, I just don't want to do this for my foreseeable future. I'm sort of getting burnt out on it. And the next thing up for me was like, well, I really like radio and journalism kind of stuff, so I'll move into the mass communications field. So that's what I did. I went through my associates at Columbia State, getting my mass comm degree, and then when I transferred into MTSU, I worked on getting my bachelor's in multimedia journalism with a minor in marketing, which is not your typical youth minister academic credentials, but that was something I wanted to do. But obviously, my career path didn't take me there. Like I said earlier, Mike was a big influence on me when it came to church, and I ended up actually interning underneath him at Westview for about 3 years as the assistant youth minister, youth intern. My title sort of fluctuated there a little bit. But helping him made me sort of realize, I want to be a youth minister. I always was involved, even after I graduated high school, when I was going throughout Columbia State and Bethel and MTSU. I always helped, always came and taught at retreats and stuff like that. So I wanted to be a youth minister, and that's the career path I wanted to follow. So yeah, I don't have the typical education for a minister, because most of the time it's through a Bible college, but I tend to try to use that to my advantage, and that's why my career choice ended up being youth minister, because the influences I had.
So while you were interning under Mike, how much responsibility did you have? Did he kind of mentor you along the way? Did he give you a lot of free rein? How did you best learn?
Well, it changed a little bit. Mike had a full-time job. He was a teacher at MCHS himself, and then he ended up being working at TCAT in Pulaski as, I'm probably going to get the title wrong. He's going to laugh at me for it. But he was I think it was the assistant director, and now he is the director of it. But throughout that time, so he had a full-time day job, so if there was an event that was during the day, I would run it. That's where WWW, Wednesdays with Will, came from, was trying to do stuff during the day, during the summer and stuff, when Mike wasn't able to because of his job. But the big things where a lot of mentoring happened was around retreats and camps and our family Bible school, our FBS, where a lot of times would me and him going over to his house and his office at home and working through retreat, coming up with the theme and planning it, and that's where a lot of those mentoring kind of conversations happened. Was through those meetings that we had. And responsibility-wise, it is really just dependent on the event. Sometimes, like I said, if he was working, it was more so me, obviously, because he wasn't there. And then there's other times where he was the one in charge. It sort of fluctuated depending on what time of year and what event it was in particular.
So how do you think God has used those previous experiences, your time at Bethel, your time at Columbia State, even even at MTSU, when you weren't really sure of the direction you were going. Were there some positives there that you picked up along the way that have helped make you who you are today?
Definitely. I know I focused a lot on the Bethel part a little bit, but I had conversations, I had debates with people. Like I said, I had religion and law and religion and society classes at MTSU. And there was a lot of good conversations that sort of spurred me on. And the more religious conversations I had with people, the more it made me want to be that youth minister. It sort of made more sense to me, I guess, how to put it. And I think God was definitely saying, like, dropping little hints there. He was definitely saying, well, here's some breadcrumbs, keep following that little trail, that little path. And even when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because like I said, I went into journalism, not ministry for my degree, I think he was still kind of pushing me that way. That even though my degree was in something that typically probably isn't really seen as a ministry kind of degree, I can use the things I learned through this, because I do a lot of the YouTube stuff and a lot of the editing video and stuff like that I learned in college. I do it here for our channel here, and the experiences I have, especially that Bethel one, I'll use it as an example for my kids. When we're going in a Bible class and we're talking about experiences we have and how people are going to test your faith, I bring up those stories and I talk about them. And I say, well, this is how I dealt with it. These are some of the things I went through, just so I can use it as an example for them, sort of as a teaching point for them.
So do you have any regrets when you look back over that path?
In the moment, I would say, like, if I was still at Bethel, I probably would say yes, I regretted that choice. But now looking back on it, I definitely think it was a good thing. I don't think I regret it at this point. It definitely, like I said, it solidified my faith even more. But hindsight being 20/20, that it is. But I don't necessarily regret it. Obviously, I wish that in some form of me does wish that I didn't have to deal with that. But at the same time, it did mold me to who I am now.
Right. So let's talk about Stacy. How did you and Stacy meet? What role do you think God played in making sure that your paths intersected with each other?
It was actually funny. I've always known Stacy. We've always known each other. She went here to Church Street. I went to Westview. We were the same age in school. She went to Cornersville. I went to MCHS. But with area-wides and different things that were going on between the two churches, we would bump into each other, and we knew each other a little bit. But it wasn't until I was at Columbia State when we sort of got to know each other better. Our first real, because you start talking and then you date and then everything else. But our first real conversation happened. Me and my cousin Dakota were playing ping pong at Columbia State in the little like lobby kind of area that was down the hall where Stacy was having one of her classes in college, because she went to Columbia State as well. And we're being silly, me and my cousin, and we were making loud noises. And we were like, ha, ha, like tennis players when they do the grunts when they hit. We were being dumb and silly. And I actually got a text message from Stacy saying, you need to be quiet. My teacher's getting mad because we can hear you down the hall. So that was sort of the start of our little conversation. But it was funny because I pick at her sometimes that she started our relationship by fussing at me. So she tries to keep me in line. But we started dating in November of that year. It was about a month-ish after that conversation. We started dating. And as you know, she was going through a rough time in her life. Her father was sick with cancer, and he actually passed away a month later after we started dating. So again, in the moment, I didn't really see anything God working that way, but I do think there was some God's hand was there, just because it was putting me in her life to help her with getting through the loss of her father, which is tough. Even today, years later, she still deals with a lot of it, and we have conversations, and there's times she gets emotional still, and that was something tough. And this is going to sound a little weird because people do sort of grimace at it a little bit, like it's a little strange. But I will say one of the moments that I really knew that we had something special, even that early on, a month or so into dating, was actually at her father's funeral. Because she was acting very strong. She was laughing, cutting up with people, swapping stories. She did have her emotional moments where she would cry and stuff like that. But she really showed me the kind of woman she was and how strong of a woman she was. And even her friend Meredith has made comments about how she knew at that point as well, because she saw how I was looking at Stacy, that something so tragic for her was going to be the start of something really good for me and her, for us. And even though that's not when I said I love you to her or whatever, but that came later by accident actually at Sonic. But it was the moment I knew that we had something special. And looking back on it, it makes me feel like God definitely, that timing was perfect for us, because I actually didn't plan on dating for a while. I had recently got a relationship. I was planning on waiting for probably after Christmas for a few months before I would start dating again. But things didn't happen that way, obviously. And we've been together ever since and pretty solid ever since. So,
Well, we've talked even beyond this conversation about how when you're in the moment, you, even as a solid Christian trying to live a faithful life and all of that, we don't typically consciously think about the presence of God. But when we have a time to reflect and look back on various parts of our life, whether it be your childhood or your dating life or your marriage or whatever, it becomes pretty obvious that God is at work this whole time, and maybe bringing you into Stacy's life at a time when she was vulnerable, and she needed somebody that gave her some stability, and you happen to be that person. I like to believe it wasn't coincidental. God was bringing you into her life when she needed you, and maybe without your even realizing it, he was bringing her into your life when you needed her.
it seemed that way. At the time, it was a weird coincidence, and going back even further, my mom and dad's timing was about the same. Mom was going through a similar thing. She lost her father and things like that. My grandfather on that side, I never knew. He died before I was born. And the sort of thing happened. Mom always thought that was a weird coincidence that Dad and her started dating about the same time she lost her father, and I started dating Stacey about the same time she lost her. So that was a little bit of a weird coincidence. But so in the moment, yeah, coincidences happen kind of thing, but definitely God was working in some way, even if I didn't realize it at the time.
And that's why I like to say there are no coincidences for a person who is a person of faith, because then we start to realize that God has been working through this all along. And maybe even the times that we describe as tragedy or sorrow, God sees from a different perspective. He uses those times to make us who we are. Let's talk about your situation here now that you finally went through this career path that led you into youth ministry. You didn't really see it coming for a while, but now it's here. Now you're in your first full-time position as a youth minister. Let's talk about that. What has the experience been like for you? What role has God been playing in your life as a youth minister?
I've really enjoyed it here. It was something that sort of sometimes feels like it fell in my lap, like a coincidence. But like you said, with people of faith, it seems like more God's plan than anything, obviously. At the time when I started here, I was actually planning on just becoming the minister at Westview. That was sort of the plan there, because eventually Mike was going to step down, and that was going to be the plan. But some things didn't work out, some timing stuff didn't work out, and that's when the job here opened up. And I talked to Mike about it, and I chose to apply, and obviously I have the job. But it's been good here, obviously, with how the past year went in 2020 with COVID. There has been some struggles with youth and stuff like that, but it has been good. I've had a lot of great experiences. There has been some rough stuff to deal with as well, but that's part of ministry. You have people who have tragedy in their life. You have people who have hardships that they come to you and vent about. So there's been some heavy stuff, but there's been also some really good times. And right now, if you've seen it as well as I have, there really is some fire right now in some of our younger families and stuff like that, which is always great to see. It gets me a little excited, a little emotional about it, because as I always say, it takes a lot more than just me to make the youth program work. I need help, I need committee members, I need parents, I need kids even to sort of do their own part. So having that kind of excitement right now is great. It makes me sleep easier at night, I guess, instead of stressing so much over it. I always joke that I've got a few extra gray hairs because of ministry, but I'm willing to take it on because I do enjoy this job a lot, and it's one of those jobs that I'm going to do, and I've always said this, I'll do it until I feel like I'm not doing a good enough job anymore, until I'm not doing the things I need to do as a youth minister. So as long as I feel like I'm connecting with the kids and things are growing, that I'm going to keep being here, unless God has some other plan for me. But right now, it does seem like I need to be here. I need to be working here, and but there are a lot of good memories, a lot of good experiences I've had so far.
I'm intrigued when you say I'm here because God has me here until He has some other plan for me. I'm interested when you come from a setting where your parents have always lived in Lewisburg. You have always lived in Lewisburg. Would you ever consider leaving Lewisburg?
No. I've always said also, I should have mentioned this, if I'm going to do youth ministry, I want to do it local. One probably because it's a little easier to do because you know people. But I just really, because I grew up here, because I grew up in Lewisburg, I just really care about the community here. So I want to be involved in some way here with church. When you start going outside the county, to me anyways, I just don't feel like I was passionate about that. Like if I went to Murray County even, which is only one over, I don't feel like I'd be as passionate about youth ministry there as I would be here in my own town. Because I want to see the youth, the church here in Marshall County. When I say that, I'm not talking about just Church Street, but the churches, the whole county itself, to grow in some way, to expand, to get more connected between our sister churches and stuff. That if I'm going to be a youth minister, I want it to be in Marshall County, where I'm local, where I know the people, where I can build something here is what I want to do.
Okay. So now we've talked a lot about your past and what brought you to where you are now. We've talked about your present. What about the future? If you could look into the crystal ball, which I know we can't, but what do you think God is up to in your life right now?
Well, there's definitely, because as a youth minister, I do have to look ahead a lot. Whether that's making calendars for next year or just looking at the next big event or whatever, I spend a lot of time looking to the next thing. And I do see, at least when it comes to Church Street and me here, we do have some younger kids that are really becoming on fire. So it's getting me excited for the future and the kind of kids they're going to become. And like I said, I'm here until I feel like I'm not doing a good job anymore. If that's 10, 15, 20 years, then so be it. I'm in here for the long haul, as much as I can be. And like I said, I want to be local. I'm not going to that's the thing too. People have asked me, it's like, what are you going to do after youth ministry? I was like, well, I haven't got to that point yet, so it's hard to tell, but I've always said something, I would probably like to do something in computers. Well, we have a lot of tech stuff here at church. I would be okay with just working in a church here locally, doing the tech stuff for them and stuff like that. I just like being involved with church. So that's one thing that, at least right now, I can say with 100% certainty that's going to be something. I want to be involved with something at a church here locally, is no matter what I do. And obviously I want that to be Church Street as long as I possibly can make it. So, because that just feels like what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to be involved in some way. And you know as well as I do, even we're ministers, but we have our hands in a lot. I help with the YouTube stuff. I help with the website stuff. And we've got social media and various other things that we have going on in here at church that I've helped with different things. So I just want to be involved with the church, either whether it's on staff or whether it's just as a volunteer basis. That's just something I want to do for as long as I can do it, whether it's now or 80 years from now, maybe.
Well, very good. We're glad you're here, and I want to thank you for taking the time to be with me today, and appreciate everything you've shared with us about your life.
Thank you.
All right, that's this week's edition of Unveiled. We want to thank all of our listeners for being with us, and please join us again next time. You have been listening to Unveiled, a presentation of the Church Street Church of Christ in Lewisburg, Tennessee. I am Kyle Bolton, the pulpit minister at Church Street, and I would like to personally invite you to come be with us during our times of worship and Bible study together. We meet every Sunday at 9 o'clock a.m. for our morning worship, followed by Bible classes for all ages at 10:15 a.m. We meet again on Sunday evenings at 6 o'clock p.m. We also have a midweek meeting for further Bible study on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. I would also like to invite you to tune in to this radio station every Monday through Saturday from 6:40 to 6:45 a.m. for our daily devotional program called Upreach. Thank you for listening. Have a blessed day.
In His presence there is comfort. In His presence there is peace. When we seek the Father's heart, we will find such blessed assurance in the presence of the Lord.
In His presence there is comfort. In His presence there is peace. When we seek the Father
Come